Happy Saturday morning, everyone. It has been a hot minute since I did a long chat, and today I'm probably going to piss a few people off. Maybe not. And if I do, that's okay. You know, I want to have a real conversation with people because, God, I'm so fed up with being told what I can and cannot say. I'm so fed up with having to listen to other people tell me what my opinion should be. And I think probably most people feel that way, right? So we're in a world right now that has 4 solid generations right now. You've got boomers, you've got X-Gen. You might still have a few that go back to the what they refer to as the Great Generation. There might be some very elderly people that are part of that generation too still. I'm sure there are. But primarily, you've got boomers, you've got X-Gen, and you've got millennials, and you have Z-Gen now running the show around and changing the world. And I am about as X-Gen as they come. And it's funny because it's interesting to see X-Gen out there on TikTok, and there's kind of a perception that we're a bit feral. I've seen millennial devotees that are just talking about X-Gen, it's a combination of respect and healthy fear. Which I find funny. And then, you know, you have my brethren and sisters of my generation who are like, oh yeah, we were the X-Gen and we walked to school in 3 feet of snow and all the things that, like, stuff my dad used to say. and what's funny about that, to a point it's true, you know, but everybody's generation had that. Everybody's generation had racists. Everybody's generation had that old granddad that didn't like anybody but his color, and that's whatever your color skin is. Everybody has that in their family somewhere, and we don't want to talk about it. It's like the dirty little secret, but it's true. And what I will tell you is the generations that we have today, they're important. All of them are important because we learn from each generation. I see millennials and boomers as being very kindred spirits because a lot of the boomer generation is big, and so is the millennial generation. They're long-term, years long, and they span decades. And so, to give you an example, my mom and dad were boomers, so is my older brother, and I fell into X generation, and so did my sister. And you know, but she's X generation, probably. I guess she's still pretty solid X-Gen. But I have a friend who is right on the cusp of millennial and X-Gen, and I think they're starting to call those Zengennials or something, or Xennials? Yeah, something like that. Anyway, there's a point to all this. And the point is that I believe that boomers were the influence for the millennials, and I believe that X-Gen are the influence for the Z generation. I believe that the older generation that came before, where they called the greatest generation, I believe that was the influence for the X-Gen. I think it kind of skips a generation. Why does it do that? It does that because a lot of those people were grandparents or to the next generation. So or parents to the next generation. And that's who we pick up our foundations from a lot of times. Do we change those foundations? Sure, we can change those foundations. And hopefully we do. Hopefully each generation learns a little bit more and gets a little better. But it doesn't mean you forget history. It doesn't mean you forget the old ways either, because the old ways have merit too. And we're still doing things now from ancient times that still have merit, right? You know, but I got thinking about all this today because I was reading some things about they were changing some books. My daughter-in-law showed me something. She's a millennial, showed me some stuff from her childhood of books that they're reading. And it was shocking. It's still shocking to me when I hear that. I don't know how much of that is propaganda, because the government and the media puts a lot of propaganda out there just to piss people off so that they can conquer and divide and keep people at war with each other. I believe that. You know, I've mentioned to you before, I have an inherent distrust of our government and the media. Some people think that's you know, a bit conspiracy theorist, and yeah, I'm not a tinfoil hat, but I do believe there's some merit to that, and because it makes sense, it's logical. The government and the media need to keep people at war with each other, and they don't want peace because that causes them to lose power, and if they lose power, then they lose money, and so pretty much all this is rooted in money, and it's unfortunate, money and control. But I won't get into all that today. That's just how I feel. So, but going back to generational beliefs, you know, and history, changing history, in my mind, is the surest way to repeat it. And there's nothing wrong with rewriting history if it's incorrect. If the history is incorrect, sure, you can put out new findings. Otherwise, we'd still be thinking that Zeus was throwing lightning bolts at us because he was pissed off. You know, we know that that's not what thunder and lightning is now. You know, and maybe there's still people out there in certain countries or cultures that do believe things like that we would find very foreign to us, you know, or uneducated, you know, and so my point is that if you've got history, you want to remember it, even if it's incorrect. You want to remember what people used to think, because that too is part of the learning experience. That too is what helps you to understand how not to make the same mistake, or what brought us to where we are today, right? So, you know, if you don't believe the same thing that I believe, that's okay, but don't hamper my ability to ask questions about it. Don't not listen to me because you might learn something. You might, you know, you have to learn from everyone. You have to learn from the people that maybe you don't necessarily believe what they believe, but hear what they have to say, because you can't learn if you don't, and you can't create change, and you can't create education if you shut people down. And there's so much in the culture now about shutting people down. Everybody wants to shut everybody down. It's like, you know, there's no freedom of speech anymore. They don't want you to have freedom of speech because that breeds too much controversy. That having freedom of speech is what creates change. And if you don't want change and you want people to be obedient, that's what they're going to, that's why you can't talk anymore. That's why you can't say what's on your mind. That saying what's on your mind doesn't mean being cruel. It doesn't make you a bigot either. It doesn't make you a racist because you ask a question about someone's culture. It doesn't make you intolerant because you don't understand something. Intolerance means that you are denying someone else the right to what they believe in. That's what intolerance is. Intolerance is saying you can't believe what you believe. You don't get to have that opinion because I said so, because I said it's wrong. That's intolerance. Intolerance isn't asking questions. Intolerance isn't trying to learn something. Intolerance is when you keep others from feeling what they feel. You don't have to believe what I believe. I don't have to believe what you believe. I don't have to understand your lifestyle. It's not my lifestyle. It's none of my business what you do. And as long as you're not hurting people. When it becomes my business is when people who can't help themselves are being hurt. That's when it becomes my business. That's when it becomes your business too. If someone's being harmed and they can't help themselves. But we look at a lot of things with this kind of bizarre perspective now. It's like we think that, you know, there's a limit to all people can be created equally in the same, in their thought process. Like, let's look at example with children. So when I'm saying to you that my 5-year-old granddaughter doesn't have the maturity to make certain decisions, it's because I can't trust her to not walk out in front of a car and get hit by a car while she's playing ball, because she doesn't have some of the most basic instincts that come through life experience and adulthood. And I'm just using that as an example, you know, because obviously you can teach your kids things, but you know, they're kids. Kids are kids, and kids don't have emotional maturity. I'm also not the same person I was 20 years ago. You know, when I was in my 30s, I thought differently than I think now in my 50s. And and it's pretty much the same with anybody I know. We all, we might inherently be the same people from our kindness or whatever, but not even that sometimes. A lot of people change a lot over years. I went to school with people that I thought were the nicest human beings in the world and ended up in jail for felonies that were real atrocities, like bad stuff. And, so I guess where I'm going with all this is that, we can't stop learning. We can't shut people down and tell them they can't have an opinion. We can't let people not be able to ask questions, because because that's your best way to educate people. How are you going to educate people? You're only going to create animosity if you tell someone they can't have an opinion. But if you ask them, you get a shot of changing their opinion if you educate them. But maybe you will have a shot at educating yourself too. Maybe your opinion will change. I've had lots of opinions that change over the years. People have certain perceptions. Like, it's interesting. I have a friend of mine, and he's gay, and he spent most of his life as a heterosexual man with a wife and a child. But he's gay now. Probably always was gay, but just didn't know it, or just came out, or maybe, I don't know. I don't know. Do you become gay? I don't know. I'm uneducated about that. But what I found interesting is that once he came out, he just changed his political party. Well, politics is whole lot more than about sexual orientation. It's about all kinds of things. So just because you are of a certain sexual orientation, there's this expectation that you are supposed to be a far left-leaning liberal. There's this expectation of that. And whose expectation is it? Who's telling you have to do that? You can love who you want to love and still believe what you want to believe from a political perspective. It's funny, my dad, it's interesting. My dad was far right-leaning conservative. I don't know that he always was that way when he was a younger man, but he was a policeman and all the things that come with seeing bad things in life and stuff like that. And, but what's interesting is people would make assumptions about my father because there are people, not everyone, but there are people who would make assumptions about my father. They might think he's racist. They might think he's, that he doesn't like gay people. My father told me one time that, I don't care who people sleep with. I don't need to know about it as long as they're paying their taxes. That's how my dad thought. Just let them pay their taxes. I don't care who they're married to. I don't care who they sleep with. Pay your taxes. And that's where his mind went from that perspective. So just because someone has some conservative values or some liberal values doesn't make them one exact thought process. It's so stupid. And the media wants us to believe that. The media wants us to believe that because I have blonde hair and blue eyes that I grew up with a silver spoon in my mouth. That can be farther from the truth. I had a lot of rough times, and anyone who knows me will know that. My success in life did not come early, and it did not come easily. And I've got the resume to prove it. The life resume, I mean. But by the same token, I have friends of color and different sexual orientation that grew up with a really nice life and great parents and went to college right away and and had a life that I would have been envious of. But their life too would have had certain aspects that I would have never had to experience. So in that part, I do have privilege. But the way we use that term today is to pigeonhole people, and it's to create divide. Instead of using it to educate people, we're using it to create divide in cultures, in race, in socioeconomic backgrounds, and that's wrong. Changing history because you didn't like what it used to be is wrong. It's wrong, and you can't tell me it's not. Changing history that is incorrect to correct it is fine, but don't forget what happened before. Don't forget what came before you, and learn from other people. It's okay to learn from other people, and it's okay to still not agree. It's okay, because if all of us are the same, then none of us are different. And what I mean by that is if all of us are the same, we've got the same strengths and we have the same weaknesses. And that is the easiest way to have someone control you and control your thought processes. As a culture, and this is in any country, in any language, in any race, in anything, you have people who want to have all the power over you. And when you fall into that mentality where you permit people to think for you and you don't think for yourself anymore, that is where you run into problems. That is where people become dictatorial to who you get to be as a person. So I guess this X-Gen gal is trying to tell you that no matter what your beliefs are, no matter whatever you think, whatever you feel, it's your right to think and feel it. But keep your eyes open. Keep your ears open. This is for any generation. Keep your eyes and ears open so you can continue to learn. Young people keep you young. And young people are the fountain of youth. But we also have a role, the generations that come before, you have a role as well to educate. Children are still children. Children don't have the experiences in life, and they will be taught some very crushing lessons if you treat them like adults who have the experience and the emotional wherewithal to handle the things that you can handle as an adult. I think that we have to watch out for people, particularly the elderly, children. We have to watch out I don't want to say disabled. I think that's not a word we're allowed to say anymore. But people who have struggles physically or mentally, or not neurotypical, I think is the term that you would use. You have to watch out for people like that. And in this era, to that point, me not understanding or knowing what the current trend or current word is that we're allowed to use is just it's an opportunity to coach me. It's an opportunity to educate me. It's not an opportunity to slander me. There was this trend going around for a while where everyone was calling all white women that were middle-aged a Karen. And it's so insulting. It's ageism is what it is. And it's also abusive. And it is, it's a form of bigotry when you do that. And everybody thought that was funny in this big trend to do that. But what you were doing is you are silencing people. And silencing people is not freedom of speech. Silencing people is just torment. It's abuse. And I'm sure that there's going to be some smart ass that'll pop on and say something like that in my feed. And frankly, I don't care, because that is not something, no one will have that power over me. No one is ever going to have that power over me where I'm going to care what some anonymous person on the other side of a keyboard, some keyboard warrior, has to say about my thought process. You know, I'm just here to share, to educate, to give you a different perspective to think about so that you can be a better human being. Maybe not like me, maybe different, maybe better than me, right? Maybe you're a better person than I am. God knows there's things that I want to work on in myself, but I feel like in this world that we live in right now, we need to band together as human beings and educate one another and give each other the right to have a platform and stop being so scared of each other. We don't need to fear one another. We need to fear the people that are trying to control our thought processes. We need to fear the people who are trying to divide the human race and keep people fighting. That's who you need to be afraid of. You don't need to be afraid of your neighbor. Maybe educate your neighbor or learn from your neighbor. So with that, you know, fire away, guys. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Try to be respectful. That's what this whole point of this conversation is about respecting one another, about respecting our past, about respecting the shoes that walked before us or the shoulders that carried us to the point today where we can have these conversations. Because, you know, there was a time that many of our cultures couldn't do that, and that doesn't matter what your skin color is. There've been centuries of torment and abuse and power abuse. So I want to hear what you have to say. I want to hear your thoughts. Do you learn from people? Do you learn from the past? Do you only look to the future? Do you judge other people because they're not like you? Or do you try to educate them and learn from them? I don't know. It's your thought process, you know. And what I want to say to you is, it's your choice. I'm Holly. I'm your fun sister. Please like, subscribe, and share.